January of 1869 must have held high hope for the young students of Iowa Wesleyan University. River navigation still flourished, and worn and beaten trailways still etched the face of the prairie. The brutal Civil War had ended, and Iowa's fathers and sons had come home to rebuild their lives. The country's first transcontinental railroad was nearing completion, providing unparalleled access to the far western frontier. And changes in agriculture, technology, and transportation were bringing new businesses to Iowa, enabling Iowa farmers to transition to businesses that could feed the growing nation. A woman of this time still had few legal rights, no vote, no economic power, and little social position without her husband. But America was beginning to offer women new opportunities. Iowa Wesleyan University was one of the first co-ed colleges west of the Mississippi, and both the college and Mount Pleasant were hubs for cultural change and social events. So perhaps it is not surprising that a group of 7 bright girls at that time and in that place decided to create a society based on their dearest values and strong beliefs. PEO Founders Day is a celebration and tribute to these young women who gave PEO life. When a new sorority taking root at Wesleyan College began to issue membership invitations late in December of 1868, old friendships were threatened because some girls were excluded. 2 close friends, Hattie Briggs and Frank Rhodes, didn't want their group of 7 friends to be split apart. When Hattie suggested they form their own society, Frank quickly agreed. After telling the others, they all met in the music room of Main Hall on January 21, 1869. By the end of the day, the 7 girls, so full of ideas and love for each other, had created PEO. These were extraordinary young women. Hattie Briggs, who first came up with the idea of a separate society, was quiet and modest, with expressive blue eyes and a radiant smile. Hattie, a minister's daughter, was born in the little town of Troy, Iowa, October 10, 1849. The family moved to Mount Pleasant in the early 1860s. Her classmates said she was the best-hearted girl who ever lived, and often called her Mother Superior and Patron Saint. She was a natural leader in church affairs and campus activities. After graduation, Hattie taught music and art in Ottumwa, and later in Knoxville, Iowa. At the close of the Reverend Briggs service on January 12, 1873, Hattie and Henry Busquette met at the altar, where Hattie's father united them in marriage, a complete surprise to most of the congregation. The beloved Hattie, who was perfectly cast in the role of wife and mother to 2 children, enjoyed that role less than 5 years. She was only 27 when she became the first in the circle of 7 to die. She passed away June 22, 1877, at Pella, Iowa, and is buried there in the Oakwood Cemetery. Frank Rhodes was the girl with the far vision, so progressive that she was years ahead of her time. Dignified and poised in manner, she was a beautiful young woman with a vivid personality. At times her face was serious and thoughtful, but always pleasant and engaging. Mary Allen spoke of her as not tall, but well-proportioned, with dark hair and eyes that fairly danced with the fullness of life and merriment. Frank, the youngest founder, was born February 10, 1852, at Marshall, Iowa, a little town near Mount Pleasant. Christened Frances Elizabeth, she permitted only the use of Frank throughout her mature years. Her mother helped the girls design and make the aprons for the march into chapel that introduced PEO to the world. Frank enrolled in the scientific course at Iowa Wesleyan at the age of 14 and graduated in 3 years. She was an intellectual and an avid reader. She married Simon Elliott June 6, 1872. They made their home in Lincoln, Nebraska, and had 2 children. Her husband operated a china store where Frank mastered the art of china painting, along with her other art interests. Changing social conditions and the advancement of women were lifelong challenges for Frank. She counted as her friends Susan B. Anthony, Lucy Stone, Frances Willard, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and many others interested in the feminist movement. Frank Rhodes Elliott died at her son's home in Chicago, August 9, 1924. Her body was cremated. On the centennial anniversary of her birth, PEO dedicated a marker for her, placed on the Elliott lot in Forest Home Cemetery, Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Mary Alice Bird, known as Alice, was born in Mount Pleasant, May 8, 1850. She was medium height with black hair and dark, piercing eyes. A gifted reader, writer, and public speaker, she was in demand for the town and college literary programs. She also loved to sing and was a member of the college quartet. A rare conversationalist, she possessed a remarkable memory, often reciting many pages from some classic that she loved. Wearing her tailor-made clothes, she took long, bold strides as she passed through the campus, and when any daring adventure was incubating, she was there in the midst. Alice wrote the first constitution for the new society and was the first president. She felt that the Constitution should reflect personal philosophies and ideals. How well I recall the day I wrote the primitive Constitution, she wrote many years later. The needs of all women, it seemed to me, must be embodied in that document, and such as it was, it has served as a nucleus for our needs ever since. Following graduation, she taught for a time at the Mount Pleasant Academy, then at Iowa Wesleyan. Alice married Washington Irving Babb on October 9, 1873. They lived in Aurora, Illinois for many years, raising 4 children. A generous hostess, Alice filled her home with culture and refinement. She remained an enthusiastic participant in Chapter A until the end of her life, helping form the Grand Chapter, writing resolutions, laws, and ceremonies, and helping launch the PEO record. She died at her home in Aurora, Illinois, November 21, 1926, and is buried in Forest Home Cemetery, Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Born March 29, 1848, in Louisville, Kentucky, Alice Virginia Coffin was known as the Sweet Kentucky Belle, although she lived in the South only the first year of her life. She was a tall, willowy blonde, possessed with an elegant grace and a stunning personality. Though sometimes meditative and thoughtful, for the most part she was cheerful, kind, and generous to a fault. She was delightful company, and especially fond of dance. During her college years, she dated Suila's handsome brother Will, eventually becoming engaged to him. However, in a difficult moment, she chose to break the engagement. Other offers of marriage came in later years, but Alice did not accept them. She served as the first vice president of PEO and designed the star emblem. A student of astronomy, she utilized her intrigue of the vastness of the sky and universe for inspiration. She began teaching after graduation and continued until the last year of her life. Alice helped start other chapters and placed great value on love and loyalty, always emphasizing that PEO was founded to perpetuate friendship. Alice died July 28, 1888, in the home of her sister at Newton, Iowa. In accord with her request, she was buried in Union Cemetery at Newton, just as the sun was setting. Suila Pearson was charming, gracious, and affectionate, bringing joy to all around her. The other founders took pride and pleasure in telling that Suila, with her dark brown curly hair and winsome ways, was the most beautiful and popular of the 7. Maria Suila Pearson was born in Cleveland, Ohio, August 24, 1851. When the Pearsons moved to Mount Pleasant, their new home became a showplace and social center. Suila entered the university in the fall of 1866, just after her 15th birthday. She became an excellent musician and was adept at dramatics. And through every endeavor, she maintained her delightful spirit of gaiety. Soon after her graduation in 1871, the family moved to Washington, D.C. She never saw the other girls again. In 1876, Suila married Frank Harold Penfield of Cleveland, Ohio. They had 2 children. Suila and her husband had a lovely home, business stability, and a high place in Cleveland society. Her many talents and social graces made her a lovable person and famed hostess. When trouble came later in life, Suela measured up magnificently to the heartbreaking tasks required of her. After a long illness, Suela died September 20th, 1920, and was buried in Lakeview Cemetery, Cleveland, Ohio. Although Suela had drifted away from PEO, her daughter Rose was initiated in 1938 as a charter member of Ohio Chapter AH. Ella Stewart was bright and cheerful, considerate and courageous, a thoroughly delightful person to know. Few could match her keen wit. She was small in stature, with curly auburn hair and deep blue eyes. Alice Bird spoke of the scent of violets that often followed in her wake. Ella Lovina Stewart was born in Pittsburgh, Iowa, May 8, 1848. Soon after her birth, the family moved to Mount Pleasant. Due to family hardships, Ella had to drop out of school to tutor and teach full-time to support her family. Still, she continued her association with the college and its activities, and remained a beloved member of PEO. Ella chose the colors that would represent PEO, white for purity and yellow for light. Based on her choices, the white marguerite with the yellow center was chosen as the Sisterhood's flower at the convention of 1893. Through the years, Ella continued to help at home, but took an active part in church, PEO, and civic activities. On a suggestion from an old friend, she took a position as a teacher at the Iowa Industrial School for Wayward Boys. Giving up that position because of ill health, she returned to Mount Pleasant for a rest, knowing and accepting the possibility that she might not recover. Through uncertainty and great discomfort, Ella never lost her faith and her courage. Ella died December 12, 1894, and is buried in the old cemetery at Mount Pleasant. She left her PEO pin to Alice Bird. Ella's pin and Alice's jeweled pin, given to her by Chapter A in 1902, are now in Memorial Hall at Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Mary Allen was a tall, slender young woman, graceful and poised with an innate dignity of bearing. She was born in Mount Pleasant, December 30, 1848. A blue-eyed blonde, Mary was known for her stylish dress. Fun-loving and popular with the whole student body, she entertained frequently in her home. On July 4, 1871, she married Charles Lewis Stafford, an ordained Methodist minister. They were married for 56 years and had 4 children. Mary was a wonderful homemaker and possessed a delightful sense of humor. She was sympathetic and comforting, ministering to those in need or distress. She treasured her friends and was adored and respected by all who knew her. As an adult, Mary was said to have developed the most maternal feelings toward PEO and all of the founders. She often spoke at conventions. In her later years, she wrote, "It is for us to make the world better and happier, for this PEO is love in action." She died July 10, 1927, at the age of 79 at her home in Muscatine, Iowa, and is buried in Forest Home Cemetery at Mount Pleasant. Mary was the last surviving member of the original 7 founders. In 2008, her PEO pin was returned to Chapter Original A and is kept in the old main memory room. Our founders left college enormously grateful for their education. They had been taught to think rigorously and had become recognized leaders in campus and community activities. While the paths they took after graduation physically separated the girls, the PEO spirit and organization they created endures in our actions and symbols. From this one school and these first women, PEO grew into the international organization we know and are a part of today. By 1871, chapters were being organized outside of Iowa. 10 years later, there were 70 chapters in 8 states and the District of Columbia. A national grand chapter was established in 1883. In 1911, just 42 years after its founding, PEO became international by expanding into Canada. Today, PEO has grown from that tiny membership of 7 to over 250,000 members, including over 12,000 in Missouri. In the early years, most chapters adopted local educational or philanthropic projects. This work has greatly expanded and today is one of the most tangible legacies of our founders. The Educational Loan Fund was established in 1907 as the first national project. It makes loans available to qualified women who desire higher education and are in need of a loan. The PEO International Peace Scholarship Fund was established in 1949 to provide scholarships for international women students to pursue graduate study in the United States and Canada. The PEO Program for Continuing Education, established in 1973, provides need-based grants to women in the United States and Canada whose education has been interrupted and who find it necessary to return to school to support themselves and/or their families. The PEO Scholar Awards, established in 1991, provide substantial merit-based awards for women of the United States and Canada who are pursuing a doctoral level degree at an accredited college or university. The PEO Star Scholarship, established in 2009, provides scholarships to exceptional high school graduating women to attend accredited post-secondary educational institutions in the United States and Canada in the next academic year. Cottey College, a fully accredited liberal arts college for women located in Nevada, Missouri, has been owned and operated by the PEO Sisterhood since 1927. A Missouri-only project, the Missouri PEO Outreach Fund, was established in 1976. The fund is available to any worthy and deserving person who is aged and/or infirm and needs either one-time or ongoing assistance. Those early years in Chapter A constitute the mutual background for every chapter that has followed. Friendship remains the cornerstone of PEO, and it thrives in our unique sisterhood. PEO exists as a source of encouragement and support for women to realize their potential in whatever worthwhile endeavor they choose. It is easy to believe that the young women who created PEO in 1869 could drop in on any sisterhood chapter meeting today and feel right at home.